The glass walls of the executive floor reflected a city that never slept, but inside the boardroom of Axton Global, time had frozen. 12 senior executives sat in silence, staring at a screen filled with red numbers. A single problem, one impossible flaw in their new logistics algorithm, had stalled a $200 million international rollout. Weeks of meetings, millions spent on consultants, and not a single solution. The CEO, Richard Axton, rubbed his temples as the clock ticked toward midnight. The deal was supposed to be signed the next morning. If they failed to fix the issue, competitors would seize the market within months. Richard had built Axton Global from nothing, but this moment felt heavier than anything before. The algorithm was routing shipments efficiently on paper, yet real-world simulations showed catastrophic bottlenecks. Entire ports would shut down. No one could explain why. "Let's take a break," Richard finally said, his voice drained. "We'll regroup in 10 minutes. The executives filed out, murmuring nervously. Some checked their phones. Others avoided eye contact, knowing their careers might end with this failure. Richard stayed behind, staring at the screen. That was when he heard the soft hum of a vacuum. He turned and saw Maria. She was the night maid, a woman in her early 40s with tired eyes and graying hair pulled back into a simple bun. She had worked at the company for 3 years, cleaning offices long after everyone else had gone home. Richard barely knew her name. To him, she had always been invisible, like the walls she wiped down every night. She paused when she noticed him watching. "Sorry, sir," she said gently. "I can come back later." "No, it's fine," Richard replied absently. "Go ahead." Maria resumed cleaning, moving quietly around the room. As she wiped the whiteboard, her eyes flicked toward the massive screen still glowing with data. Richard didn't notice at first. He was too lost in his thoughts. Then she stopped. She stared at the screen for a long moment, her brow furrowing. "Sir?" she asked hesitantly. Richard sighed, already exhausted. "Yes. I don't mean to interrupt," she said, choosing her words carefully, "but that problem, I think I see why it's failing." Richard let out a tired, humorless chuckle. "We've had the best minds in the industry working on it." Maria swallowed. "I understand. But, may I?" Something in her tone made him pause. Not confidence, something deeper. Familiarity. Against his better judgment, he nodded. "Go ahead." Maria stepped closer to the screen. She didn't touch the keyboard. She just looked. For 10 seconds. Maybe 15. "That assumption there," she said, pointing to a variable in the routing logic, "it treats all delays as equal. But port congestion isn't linear. Once you cross a threshold, everything collapses. You need a cascading penalty, not a flat one." Richard froze. That was the exact issue they had been circling for weeks without naming. She continued, unaware of the shock she was causing. "If you add a dynamic modifier based on historical surge data, the system will reroute before the bottleneck forms. It's like traffic. If you wait until the jam exists, it's too late." The door to the boardroom opened. 3 executives walked back in, and stopped dead. Richard's mouth was dry. How do you know this?" Maria hesitated. Her hands trembled slightly. "I used to be a systems engineer," she said softly. 10 years ago. I worked on large-scale optimization models. After my husband died and my father got sick, I had to take whatever work I could find. This job fit the hours." Silence swallowed the room. One executive scoffed. "This is ridiculous." Richard raised a hand, eyes never leaving Maria. "Can you show us?" They gave her a laptop. Within seconds, her fingers moved with practiced ease. She rewrote a small portion of the model, adding a cascading delay function. The simulation ran. The red numbers turned yellow. then green. The bottlenecks vanished. Total projected savings, $217 million. No one spoke. The executive stared at the screen as if it were a miracle. Richard stood slowly. Call everyone back, he said, his voice steady but low. Now. Within minutes, the entire executive team crowded into the room. Maria stood off to the side, unsure where to look. Richard replayed the simulation, then turned to her. This woman just solved the problem we've been stuck on for 3 weeks, he announced. Murmurs erupted. Some faces showed disbelief. Others, embarrassment. Richard raised his voice. And she did it in seconds. The room fell silent. He walked over to Maria and extended his hand. Maria, I owe you an apology. We owe you one. You should never have been invisible here. Her eyes filled with tears. I was just doing my job, sir. Richard shook his head. No. You were doing ours. The next morning, instead of signing the deal quietly, Richard did something no one expected. He called an all-hands company meeting. Thousands of employees gathered, confused by the sudden announcement. Maria sat in the back, still wearing her cleaning uniform, planning to slip out unnoticed. She didn't get the chance. Richard stepped onto the stage and told the entire story, from the crisis to the boardroom moment to the solution. Then he said, Today, I want to introduce our new senior systems strategist. A spotlight swept across the room and stopped on Maria. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Her knees nearly buckled as Richard called her name. Slowly, trembling, she walked forward. Effective immediately, he announced, she would receive a leadership position, a salary reflecting her expertise, and a bonus equivalent to the savings she had created. $1 million. The room erupted into applause. Maria stood there, stunned, tears streaming down her face. But Richard wasn't finished. This company almost failed, he said, not because we lacked talent, but because we failed to see it. Let this be a lesson. Brilliance does not always come with a title. Over the following weeks, the story spread beyond the company. News outlets picked it up. Social media exploded. Some called it a miracle. Others called it overdue justice. Maria moved into her new office, still arriving early, still staying late. But she never forgot where she came from. She started a quiet initiative inside the company, free training programs for janitorial and support staff, anonymous skill assessments, second chance hiring. People who had once felt invisible began to be seen. Richard watched it all with a changed perspective. One evening, months later, he passed by the cleaning crew and stopped. How's everything going? He asked. Maria smiled. Better than I ever imagined. He nodded. You didn't just save $200 million, he said. You changed how we see people. She replied softly, you just listened. And that, more than the money, shocked the entire company forever.